So you know what strategy is. Strategy is a roadmap. Strategy is making decisions and choices. And strategy, is the plan, as I mentioned, to get from one stage to the other stage, from as a stage to the desired state. That's what strategy is. But how do we do it? How do we make that decision? How do we answer those questions? So it depends. So there are many different major models, and these are the models that they would go over in MBA. So I just wanted to make sure I touch on those. But as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to use too many of these models. I think some of these models are very high level for corporate strategy. Some of these models, are good to get you started, to get you thinking about the right questions, and also get to the root cause. But again, that's something that you don't think in your daily life and be like, oh, let me strategize. Should I go to Whole Foods or Target? What's my strategy there? Let me put Porter's 5-4-6. No, it's more, like value curve is the one that you can use a lot more. Fishbone, a lot of people could just, get their thoughts down on a nice mind map. The 5 whys, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it, but there is a trick there that I'll explain as well, like, when to stop in the 5 whys. And then the BCG Matrix is more for portfolio. So let's say a company like GE or, a different company may have many different products, then identifying some of those products, like which ones are cash cows, which ones are stars, which ones are the ones that you need to eliminate, or which ones, so those are like overall every product has a cycle. It grows and then it plateaus and then it just comes down. I mean, that just is with every product. So that's what it talks about. So let's begin with the SWOT analysis. So I'm sure most of you guys know what SWOT analysis is. There's no rocket science to SWOT analysis. Strength, weakness, opportunity, threats. So what is it used for? It's very helpful when you want to lay it down in a matrix. So you just put a line and you write SWOT, and then you go ahead and start writing as a company, what are your strengths, and you can do that in comparison with your competitors. So at Copper Mobile, what would be the strengths? So the strengths are that we are very flexible. So we work with our customers in a very flexible way, where we try to make sure that we don't play very hardball. Like if one of our competitors you go to, then as soon as you call them, the first question that they would ask is, hey, is your budget more than $350,000? If not, click. So of course we're flexible. Even if someone comes in, an entrepreneur, like I got a call last week from somebody who was doing a project at UNT in healthcare, related to telemedicine. And, so we still kind of nudged her in the right direction, and she was so happy. And, she was like, oh, you guys are great. And it's just about building the community. I mean, eventually when she graduates, she becomes a doctor, maybe she takes a position somewhere, who knows? Maybe she'll put a nice review that someone would see and then, become our customer. So I think that could be one of the strengths. Another strength could be our India office, right? Another strength could be a lot of the experience. So we've done, over 760 applications. So that could be a strength. What is our weakness? So, the weakness could be brand name. So, if we were competing with Accenture, at a very large contract, let's say, then they'll be like, okay, you might be a great company that we've never heard of. So whatever. So, that could be a weakness, and we can write down, other weaknesses there as well. What are our threats? So our threat could be that, we're obviously small. So if our key employees leave the company, then what is the company, right? I mean, that could be a threat. But Accenture, even if a couple of partners leave, they have the ability to hire, retrain, and, there could be other threats as well. What's the opportunity? The opportunity could be that we're so nimble and, agile that, we can quickly make that decision that, hey, there's a lot of demand in AR, VR because of COVID-19. let's train a half a dozen people and create that center of excellence, and there can be many others. So what it does is it just helps you lay out the entire thought process. It's a brainstorming tool that you can do with your team members, and it's something that everybody needs to know. So that's why I have it here. It's and you guys probably already knew it, so that's fine. Okay, next is Porter's 5 forces. Again, a very MBA like model, which every MBA needs to just know this. So that's why we have it. This is usually done at a corporate strategy level, at industry level. So what industries to get into, and this was done in long time ago, decades ago, and it's part of every MBA textbook. So in the center is the competitive rivalries, meaning what is the competitive landscape? How many other companies are doing mobile application? Well, not so many in 2010. Not that we did the Porter's model and then said, hey, let's start a mobile app company. Not at all. But that would have said that, there are not too many companies, and this is an emerging technology, and this is an important field. If you get that, get ahead, then you can really command some knowledge and capture some local market, and get some brands or whatever that may be. So that's competitive rivalry. So you kind of write it down and come up with that. Then in any industry, before you're entering, you look at suppliers' power. So like usually this again, done decades ago. So usually it can be explained the best in the automobile industry. So as an example, Bosch or some other OEMs, they can have a lot of power if there are not too many other suppliers there. So they can have a lot of leverage, and they can command those higher prices. So it needs to be considered that what power do the suppliers have. Then buyers' power. So buyers' power can be if there are not too many buyers, it could be, let's say, hospitals, and all the medical equipment companies just are limited to those specific hospitals that we have. So that means that buyers have a lot of power, and they can negotiate and command the price, drive the pricing down for the product. So that needs to be considered if you want to be in that industry or not. Then threat substitution. So let's say that airlines, right? I mean, how would you go from Dallas to LA? I mean, there's no substitute. I have to fly. I can't say, let me just go by train, not in the US. So I guess they can command whatever price. But in Europe, if you can just, take a train from London to Paris and, just be there in a few hours, the flight prices are going to, not be as competitive. So the market airline industry in Europe may not be as attractive because there is that substitution threat. Like customers can substitute the product for something else. They can go by train, maybe they can drive, I'm not sure. So that's what this means. And then threat of new entry. So that means that, how easy it is for someone to just put up a shop and be in that business. So airlines, nah, I mean, it's going to take a lot to buy a few planes and then, operate that route, forecast all that stuff, then price it the right way. So, that's, from threat of new entry, it's better. But, if it's a mobile app development company, anybody could just go start their company from their garage, go to Wix or, put on a website, through WordPress. So there are relatively low barriers to entry or threat of entry, okay? So these are the things that need to be considered in Porter's 5 forces. And Porter says, and he's a great guy, and he says that, these are the considerations that we need to have when we are considering entering into a new industry, okay? All right, so this is McKinsey's 7 S's. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but this is something that everybody just needs to know, because this model was developed in the 80s, by McKinsey, and it's a good model. It just helps you structure your organization, or like in the old days, when the companies would get too big, then it becomes difficult to manage. So they came up with the idea that the way that you look at everything is by evaluating in these sections. So What that means is in the center, there's the shared values. Okay, so what are your shared values? So you write it down. As a company, what are the shared values across? And then you basically on top there's the hardware, and then at the bottom there is the software. So again, not in that true literal sense, but it's like the hardware of the company or the software of the company. So the hardware is more difficult to change. Like, you can't go and change the strategy of the company suddenly. You can't go and just, suddenly change the structure of the company. You can't go and change all the systems that you have in place. But things that are easier to change are more like skills. So, you can update the skills, the styles like the culture. Again, not that easy to change, but it's relatively easier to change. And the staff, so you can get more people, new people, and then you can change some of that staff that may not be trained or retrain them. So these are each of these items where they, again, write down something. I mean, there's no like magic here that you'll suddenly write it down and voila, you'll have the answer to it. No, I mean, it's just basically to help you think. So these are all frameworks that you do the exercise and then you wait for the insight. You talk about it, you discuss it, you write it down, and then you wait for the insight. And it may come, or you may have to apply a different model. And it's important to know which model to apply there. Okay, next is Fishbone Analysis. Again, it's very, very popular. But what it means is it's a root cause analysis model. So how do we get to the root cause of a problem? So it's very important in this model to have a very well-defined problem statement. So, we can do this exercise, but I think we're kind of running a little bit short on time, and I want to cover a lot more things. But this could be a good assignment for you guys to just do a little bit of research, maybe fill out a fishbone model. So let me show you what this means. I'll use a pointer here. So this is the problem statement. Oops. I don't need the pointer. I need the... Okay, I think the pointer is good. So here's the problem statement. So you put that as a problem statement, and then you draw a line, and it's like a fish. So the fish bone is like this, and there's a Japanese person with a complex name that I don't remember exactly, but starts with a K. He was responsible behind coming up with this model, and he would, like, there is the main bone, and then there are these other bones. And what you do basically is you think about some very common things in this fishbone model. So material, methods, machines, measurements, environment, and people. So again, and you can change that, but it gives you a way to think about what might be wrong. So let me think of an example. Okay, so I have an example. So let's say you are a car company, okay, let's say you are a mechanic who does painting of cars. So your problem is that the paint is not very good, and like the painting, we're not doing a good job and the customers are complaining. So that can be one problem, okay? So we define the problem statement, the paint is bad and the customers don't like it. So that's the problem. So now you go and potentially identify the causes within those different areas. So process. So hey, maybe you're not using the right process, so you don't have the right process. Machinery, maybe the nozzle that you're using for painting the car, that's not right. Places, so maybe it's not at the right place where it needs to happen. Material, you're not using the right paint. And then you write down those causes in those specific areas. And then once you write down those causes, and there can be multiple causes within that area, and that's why that more dashes, as you can see on that fish. So it really just looks like a fish as well. But why it's a good model and it's more popular than some of the other ones? The reason is because it's highly visual. So once you lay it out and you really talk about it, it's a good brainstorming tool. It's very systematic. Okay, so just one by one you can go through all this. It's very organized, and I guess this is the way that you can work towards the root cause of the problem. So that's our fishbone analysis. I'll cover one more, and then we can stop for questions. Okay, actually, we can go through questions first, if there are any, because now this is the most important one that we're going to use even in our daily lives. Okay, and that answers Vina's question as well, the one that she took. Which one to take, and so any questions so far, or should we continue? Okay, good deal. We'll carry on then. All right, quick time check. We have 40 minutes. Okay, so this model, is also called as 4 actions model. 4 actions model. So as you can see, but okay, you can see that there are 4 actions that you can take. But on the y-axis is the offering level of any product or any service. On the x-axis is the key competing factors. So we have taken an example, and thanks to the design team, they put this together. So we have taken a model, or we have taken an example of a hotel. So let's say that there's a hotel, and they want to see that we would like to be unique, right? We would like to increase sales, or whatever the goals may be. And then they say, okay, what are the factors on which we are competing? So like if someone has to choose, hey, I go to this hotel or that hotel or this hotel, what are the factors? Architecture, how does the hotel look? Lounge appeal. So, how good is the lounge? What about room size? How big is the room? Technology access, room amenities, silence, bed quality, and price. So let's say these are the ones. We can come up with more, but let's say these are the main ones. Then we plot as a company yourself, and you can, have a industry competitor as well, as you can see. So your company may be, low on architecture. Lounge appeal is also a little bit low. Technology access, is reasonable, I guess. Room amenities, there are not very many. But the bed quality is paramount, I guess. And there should be a silence also there, like a dot at silence. Every factor, you're going to plot this, okay? And then you're going to make a line graph. So basically, that is, where you are. Now think about, depending on who your customer is. Let's say you're a hotel for backpackers, okay? So what do the backpackers want? I mean, they don't care about the architecture. They don't care, as much about maybe the lounge, and they don't care about the room size. They had a tough day. They just want to go and crash. They would like the technology access. So maybe you want, to raise the technology access there. Then room amenities, they don't really care about room amenities. I mean, it can be moderate. Silence, yes. I mean, they want good night's sleep so they can hit the road next time. And then the bed quality, they would like it to be extremely high. Price, they want it to be very low. So you can create your own graph and be like, this is where we want to be. So this is a 4 actions framework. What that means is that this is, and it's called value curve. So what that means is that it gives you those decisions on what to do, what actions to take. So if you're a backpacker thing, you probably want to increase the technology access. They want to check all their emails, reply to their emails, catch up with everybody, do some, calls. And then accordingly, if this was, a luxury hotel in the business district, then they may not care too much about the price. They may want a really good architecture and the lounge appeal, and they may not care about some of the other stuff there. So I think those are the things that we need to plot and think about how uniquely you are going to be positioned, and then you need to either eliminate. So we don't want technology access because you know what? We're only getting these people who don't need technology, or you want to reduce something because it costs money for each of these competing factors. You may want to raise something, and you may want to, create something that may not exist right now. So I think it would help if we take that example now that Veena, you gave, that what are the key competing factors for, let's say, a company that's wanting to launch that application. I mean, and I'll get you guys started, and then tell me if you guys would like to give some input. But one company, has a segment that's, really maybe youngsters, millennials, late millennials, and they don't want to wait on anything. So it's important to make that app fast. It's important to, have that rich user experience where, it's native user experience. So, you plot that. How important is the good experience? So you put that up. And so then you would ask, hey, what kind of budget we're working with? And then a company may have, not too much budget. So, cost is important. So to one of your points, where, web may cost, a lot less than developing a native application. So those are some of the factors that you can plan on, the key competing factors. And then you could, plot that what are some of the things that you want high of, and create your value curve and be like, okay, based on this, we recommend that you need to go native. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's about, doing something and getting the data. So, but we can come across that we've done our research when we present something to the customer. So in a good mobile strategy engagement, we would be able to lay it out for them and be like, Mr. Customer, your product is used by, the baby boomers, and, they would like it to not fat finger the information, not have sign up or this or that, whatever their traits may be. And we'll cover that, how it's so important to understand our customer. And, again, that goes to a little bit of marketing, but that's just, all related in some ways. So any questions on value curve? Okay, if there are questions, yes, go ahead, Alec.
Just a question. How, so it seems like there's a lot of thinking that goes into which points to plot. As you were going over the example from Veena, I'm thinking okay, maybe one of the plot points is iOS access or Android access, how much of the customer base uses that. So It seems like there's, okay, good. All right, well, that actually answers my question.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think, and again, it's about intelligently thinking about it and really focusing and thinking about, okay, what are some of the factors? What are the right questions to ask the customer? And, that'll be our final aha moment that, these models are good and they're good to have in the back pocket, and there are 20, 30 of them, that I can recommend some book as well, an MBA, they give you a book to go through these and prepare for the interviews. But, that's what they are. They're just models. I think we need to, ask the right questions is what we would establish, and we'll establish, how we can ask those right questions. How do we get better at strategic thinking? But you're absolutely right. I think it can be many of those factors. And what this demonstrates to the customer, to the leadership that we're presenting to, that, hey, we've done our homework, we've thought through it, and this is what we're recommending. But, they may think that, okay, you know what, that's right, but, we think that this is a more important factor for the audience or the target audience that we may have. So again, it's not set in stone, but this is a recommendation. This is a framework to brainstorm and collaborate with the leadership and say, okay, well, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts? So like that.
It's like visual decision making.
Exactly. And ability to think about various factors, in that framework. Okay, so these tools and frameworks extremely important for strategy. Meaning to understand strategy. And like I said, eventually we want to get into that strategic thinking and get into that habit of just coming up with these questions to ask in a natural way. Eventually. Okay. Now last one is the 5 whys model. So again, would someone like to, if someone already knows, would like to explain the 5 whys model?
Yeah, so based on what I know, it's a way to get more granular about why a problem occurred. Asking the 5 whys will typically lead you to a conclusion of what may have gone wrong, and then you can start to address it.
Exactly right. Perfect. Keva, you want to add something?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly where I was going, and I would add that in the use cases I've used it in, it became really important to make the whys a matter of fact and not a matter of pointing fingers at who might be associated with a particular why. In the case of like a root cause analysis, why something might have gone wrong, nobody's pointing fingers, but we're just trying to learn how to improve on the situation.
Excellent point. Absolutely. And, that's one step even ahead. You're right. In executing the 5 whys, we cannot be finger pointing. It needs to be more factual on, okay, well, this happened because, we have this. So totally. I think that's a very important leadership skill. Let me give you a tip on 5 whys. So let's go through this example and then I'll give you that tip. So why are the sales down? Let's say that is the problem that you're trying to solve. Why are the sales down? So you say, okay, why? So why are the sales down? Because we're not able to produce more. Okay, why are we not able to produce more? Because we have reached our production capacity. Well, why have we reached our production capacity? Because we don't have enough staff. Then why don't we have enough staff? Because we've used our budget to buy raw material. And this is totally made up example. I think a CFO would just come in and be like, no, you just don't buy something, but okay. So because we have used our budget to buy raw materials, so we can't buy enough, or more labor, we can't hire more labor. And why? We were getting a good price from the supplier. So, okay, so that's the reason. So we need to have a standard operating procedure where we don't get ahead of ourselves and buy too much inventory and not have enough staff to work on it. So that's like a why, framework. But here's the trick. We need to know when to stop asking why. And there's no golden rule that it's going to be 5 questions and then we get the answer. Like a lot of times, once you ask the 3 questions, well, why don't we have enough staff? It may be it may lead us to the root cause. And then if you ask more questions, then you're gonna, not get to the root cause, but just, have not a good question. So it's called 5 whys, but again, in consulting, in strategy, it's, knowing when to stop on those 5 whys. At that point, you have to evaluate, okay, this is the root cause.